Hey everyone, I'm Colleen Ballinger, and today we're going to talk about dermatillomania. I've talked about my journey and struggle with dermatillomania on my vlog channel a little bit, but I've never talked about it on my main channel, and I've never really dove into what it is and what it means for me because, quite frankly, I'm embarrassed. But I think that the biggest thing that has helped me with this disorder is finding other people who are going through the same thing and knowing that I'm not alone. So I'm hoping by making this video, I can help other people out there feel less alone who might be struggling with this. And also I'm hoping I can find a community of people that can help me go through it because it sucks. And I think I can use all the support that I can find. Also, I think it might be really beneficial to help educate more people on this disorder because I do think it is something that a lot of people struggle with and it is really misunderstood. And I think that talking about it on a big platform might be able to help people to understand what people with disorders like this are going through. But before I get into anything, I obviously want to clarify that I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I know nothing. I am just an idiot. All I know is the research that I have done, and I know my own personal experience, and I know what doctors have told me, what therapists have told me. So that is the information I'm going to be sharing. So I'm really nervous, and this video might be all over the place, but let's get into it. So what is dermatillomania? Dermatillomania is a skin picking disorder. It's a psychological condition that causes people to continuously and compulsively and sometimes obsessively pick at their own skin. It's an impulse control disorder, and it's also in the family of BFRBs, which is a body-focused repetitive behavior. So trichotillomania, which is the hair pulling disorder, is also in this family. So I'm going to tell you some facts about it, what it is, and then I'm going to tell you my personal experience with it. So this mental illness is characterized by one's obsessive picking at their own skin, and everyone kind of picks at their skin, right? So you're probably thinking, well, I pick at like the skin around my fingers, or I pick at the skin on my face, like if I have a blemish or something. It is very common to kind of pick at your own skin when you're nervous or just fidgeting, you know, that's very common. But what makes this disorder different is I will do it obsessively and for hours and until there is tissue damage, scarring, bleeding, gashes, wounds. I'm emotional right now because it's embarrassing. I just feel like I can hear the comments right now. I can hear people saying like, why would you do that to yourself? Like it's hard. It's not a pretty mental illness. It's not like something that's relatable. It's a hard thing to admit out loud to hundreds of thousands of people. Like I rip off my own skin until I have gashes and blood, and it's fun. So here are some fun facts about dermatillomania. 2 to 5% of the population does it to an extent where it causes damage or impairs their quality of life. I am part of that 2 to 5%. Lucky me. 75% of the people affected by it are female. There is no cure, but it is treatable, and I'm currently in treatment for it. And I have been in treatment for it on and off for a while and have had no luck so far, which is another reason why I am making this video, to kind of keep myself accountable and also track my progress with this. There's hardly any funding or research on it. CBT, or cognitive behavioral treatment, is the most commonly used treatment for it. It can be triggered by anything. I think a lot of people see someone picking their skin and think, oh, they must be feeling anxious or nervous. And that's what people have always assumed about me, but that is not the case. It can be triggered by kind of almost anything. Everyone is different, but it can be triggered by anxiety or stress or kind of extreme emotion, boredom. And something that most people don't know is that it's usually accompanied by feelings of comfort, satisfaction, which is why it's so hard to stop, because there's something about it that is like satisfying and gratifying. But what sucks about it is the second that the picking episode is over, there is an extreme amount of guilt and shame that you feel. So kind of all day, every day, I'm in this tug of war with myself of like getting into this trance-like state where I have a picking or pulling episode, feeling satisfaction and determination and comfort. And then the second it's done, feeling extreme embarrassment, shame, disappointment. And that's very taxing on a person after a while. That's a hard thing to go through on a daily basis, like those really, really extreme emotions. I think the biggest myth is we can't just stop. So I think the worst thing that you could possibly say to someone who's in the middle of a picking episode, if you see someone doing it, is saying, stop that. That will not help. For me personally, that just makes me aware that you noticed the thing that I am really embarrassed of. But because when I start, I cannot stop, I assume that now this person will think I'm weak because I can't stop, think I'm gross, think I'm weird. And oftentimes I will go to the bathroom or to another room to finish what I have started. Another big myth with this is that it is not a serious issue. Skin picking and a lot of BFRBs are associated with very serious conditions. 66% of people with a skin picking disorder have reported depression from their skin picking. 86% of people also have anxiety, me. It also comes along with poor body image, low self-esteem, poor sleep due to the picking and not being able to stop for hours, me. Decreased immune function, physical obvious ailments. Since anxiety and depression are so strongly connected to skin picking disorders, many experts agree that treatment for depression and anxiety need to happen during treatment for the skin picking disorder. And it also is usually classified as OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. And that is true for a lot of people, but for me, it is from my ADHD more than from OCD. Another myth about it is that it is self-harm. It is not self-harm. While I am harming myself by doing it, it is not a form of self-harm. So I read this and I really liked it, so I wanted to share it with you because I think it describes it pretty well. The worst part about a skin picking disorder, for many people, it's an effective tool to soothe anxiety, especially in an acute situation. We continue to do it because it works and it makes us feel better in the heat of the moment. It's a great distraction from worry and stress, allowing us to focus on picking instead of an unpleasant situation happening in our brains at the moment. So those are just some general facts and information about dermatillomania. And now I'm going to tell you about my personal experience with dermatillomania and how much it has truly affected my life. This is something I've struggled with almost my entire life. And it is not something I knew was a thing until like 2-ish years ago. I thought it was just something that I did that people thought was gross. I did not know it was a disorder. I didn't know it was connected to mental illness. I had no idea. So mine is connected to my ADHD. A lot of people assume that if you have dermatillomania, you have OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, because you are obsessively and compulsively picking at your skin, and it is a skin picking disorder. Makes sense. When I was diagnosed with ADHD, my doctor asked me about my history with my skin picking and when I started doing it, which is around the time of my early teens. It's not connected to some traumatic event in my life, which I feel like a lot of therapists have tried to connect it to in the past. But a lot of times you think of ADHD as like the hyper kid in class who can't stop jumping and bouncing off the walls. And I wasn't like that. Of course, I have my hyper moments. I can be intense, I guess, but like I wasn't that. And hyper focusing and fixating on picking at my skin was my way of focusing that hyperactivity in my brain onto something. So instead of me jumping around and squirming around in my seat, I was actively picking at my own skin. So for me, how it starts is I feel or notice a small imperfection on my skin. It can be the smallest flake of skin. I mean, something so minuscule, I feel like most people wouldn't even notice it. And for some reason, my brain just decides to not think about logic and goes, well, I'm gonna rip that little flake of skin off until my finger is completely smooth, which of course, that's not how skin works. But there's an obsessive element to it where I'm like, well, if I just keep ripping at this, it will eventually get smooth and there won't be any flakes of skin. So it kind of starts with just feeling a small flake, but then I get like sucked into a vortex and I get kind of zoned out and very focused, and I literally cannot stop. Another big correlation with ADHD and skin picking is that it releases dopamine in my brain. And if you know anything about ADHD, you know that people with ADHD need that dopamine. We want that dopamine. Anything that gives us the dopamine is the thing that we want. There's like triple whammy satisfaction for skin picking when you have ADHD, because I'm super stimulated because it's a physical stimulation. It releases dopamine in my brain, which I need and crave and want. And if I am lacking that dopamine and I'm in an under-aroused state, that picking and pulling of my skin does not register in my brain as pain. In fact, I feel no pain, but it does get registered as stimulation. And the stimulation reinforces the behavior because it's rewarding and the ADHD brain craves it, which is why it feels impossible to stop. ADHD also comes along with impulse control. I know that when I start ripping at my skin and I see that I'm starting to bleed or see that it's starting to become an actual flesh wound, I know it's probably a good time to stop, but the yearning and the need and desire for that dopamine is way more intense than knowing that it's a bad idea. Does that make sense? So that leads me to the next thing, which I realize I haven't told you yet. A lot of people with dermatillomania pick at the skin on their face, pick at the skin on their arms, on their hands. My focus is my fingers, my hands, and my feet. Like I said, I've talked about this on my vlog channel before. I've talked about the frustrations of it. I've been vlogging every day for a year, so there are days where it's really bad and I just happen to open up about it online. And then there are weeks that go by where I don't bring it up at all because I'm embarrassed and I don't want to. But just to give you guys a little bit of an understanding of what I've been going through, I don't remember what it's like to walk without limping. I walk on my toes because the soles and heels of my feet don't have skin. Basically, all the tips of my fingers are calloused right now. I like focus on like all around my fingernails, and then they go down to like here. So all the way down to like here is calloused and woundy, but it's honestly like not as bad as it's been in a long time. Doesn't mean I'm better. It just means I've switched my focus to my feet for that week to let my hands heal so that I can go at my hands again. So for me and my personal experience, yes, I've been doing this since I was pretty young, but I've been able to keep it pretty controlled most of my life. But the level of stress and anxiety that I have felt in the last couple of years has made it much worse. It really started going downhill right after I had my son because I was going through postpartum anxiety. A lot of women get postpartum depression. I got postpartum anxiety, all that rush of hormones and all the new changes my body was going through. I was going through in my life while I was so happy to be a mom and I was so happy to be touring and I was excited about life not being pregnant. I was struggling with postpartum anxiety, which was making the skin picking worse. And I have to say thank you to you guys because I was in therapy for it and my therapist at the time wasn't familiar with dermatillomania, and it actually was you guys who let me know that that was something I should look into. I was talking about it once and I got some comments from people who also struggle with dermatillomania. They let me know what it was and I looked into it and I felt so overwhelmed with emotion because this thing I've struggled with my whole life, I never knew it was a thing. I thought it was just something everyone did, but I was weak because I couldn't stop doing it when other people could. I didn't realize that it was like a disorder. As a kid, I remember making up reasons for why I was doing it. In fact, I think there might be a video of me on the internet from many years ago talking about an experience I had with a skin picking episode on my feet. And I used to lie and say that I would get possessed. It wasn't a full lie because I think part of me thought it was true because when I do it, I am in like a trance-like state. I get very focused and it's almost like a hypnotic state of mind where I'm just so hyper-focused. I almost feel like I'm not all there. And so the first few times that I did it, I remember thinking like once I noticed my feet were bleeding, I thought, oh my gosh, like maybe I was possessed because like I wouldn't do this to myself. Like I wouldn't just like rip up my fingers and my feet until they bleed. So like I must be possessed. But I used to tell stories about that. I used to tell my friends that like I would get possessed and I would black out and I would like cut up my feet when in reality that's not what was happening. I just had dermatillomania. Everyone who struggles with this struggles with it in a different way. So please don't take anything that I am saying as like fact about this disorder. It's just like my personal experience. Some people are triggered by anxiety or depression or some extreme emotion. For me personally, I'm kind of triggered by anything, but I think the biggest thing for me would be boredom. If I am bored and needing that dopamine, like that's usually when I really go to town and start doing it. But it does get worse with anxiety or sadness or panic, confrontation, anything like that does make it worse. But like, I'm kind of always doing it. It's so hard to explain to someone. It's so hard to explain the feeling of in those moments of those episodes, like knowing that this is not good. Stop. Like I can't tell you how many times in my head I'm screaming at myself, like, just stop, look what you're doing. And I can't stop and I don't. It's very frustrating and I'm in therapy for it. I am actively trying to stop doing it. And I've been told by many people who struggle with it and by therapists that like, it is a very long, hard journey to stop. It's embarrassing when my husband he wants to take our son on a walk and he wants me to go with him and I can't because my feet are in too much pain, or I know my feet hurt too much to put on shoes that day. It's weird feeling like I just wish I didn't do this. I wish I didn't do this. Like I wish I could just stop doing this. But then at the same time, I can't imagine my life without it. So it's just a really weird mental state to be in. And I wanted to share it with you guys. And at the risk of being made fun of, at the risk of people not understanding and thinking I'm weirder than they already think. Because I could sit here and be like, I have ADHD or I have anxiety or I've struggled with depression. I can talk about those things. And I feel like those are all more accepted by society and understood by society. So like, I feel like if I talked about those things, the reaction would be more like, oh yes, we understand and we sympathize and like, that must be so hard. But with this, I feel like it's something that people would just be like, what's wrong with you? Like, you know? And so, but I don't want people to feel that way because when you're living it, it's really sucks, and it's really hard, and it's really embarrassing, and it sucks feeling like you can't talk about it because no one will understand, and it sucks feeling like if you talk about it, everyone's gonna make fun of you or think you're a freak. And I think that because I think that about myself. So I'm like, well, if I think that about myself, everyone else will think that too. So I think a big reason of why I want to make this video is like to start the process of like normalizing and talking about this issue, because I don't think people who struggle with dermatillomania or trichotillomania or other BFRBs should have to feel this way. I don't think they should have to feel like they can't talk about it because they're ashamed or embarrassed. Like they should be able to say like, I have this, like people say with other mental illnesses or disorders. So I want to show you guys some footage I filmed the other night, and this is a hard thing for me to share, but I had a bad episode the other night, like I do most nights, and I filmed right after. I didn't film during because I'm not thinking about filming during those moments, but I filmed right after, and I don't show like my skin in this, but you will see blood, and you'll see me experiencing the like extreme shame and embarrassment that comes with finishing an episode of picking. And so I just want to share that to show like how extreme like those situations can be. So here's that. I just had a really bad episode. This is so embarrassing, but I feel like this is important to show people. If you don't like blood, don't look. But I'm just sitting in my office like working, and I was ripping at my own skin. Don't feel any pain, don't feel anything. I will probably in 5 minutes. But then I look down, I'm gonna show you my chair. This is blood. It's ruined this like blanket on my chair with all the blood that is all over my feet. Like, why do I do this? Like, why can't I stop? Like, it's so embarrassing. It's so frustrating. And like, it's not like relatable. It's not a like, oh, everyone gets anxious, so you can kind of understand a little bit of what anxiety could be like. You know, this is something that's embarrassing, and it's not something people understand. And it's not something I feel like people will understand no matter how I try to explain it. Why would someone sit and just rip off their own skin? Like it's weird and gross and embarrassing. I hate it so much, and yet I cannot stop doing it. And I just wanted to like, in case I ever end up talking about this publicly, like in depth. I know I talk about it every once in a while, but I've never really talked about it in depth. Like I just want to show what this what this mental illness looks like. It's not, oh, sometimes I pick at a hangnail. It's not, sometimes I bite at my skin. It is sitting at night for hours ripping off your own skin till there's blood everywhere. And then you have to hide it because you're ashamed and embarrassed and lie to people about what's happening. Because how do you explain this to someone? How do you explain to someone like, there's blood all over? There was a vlog once where I talked about this. I said like, I feel gross. And someone said, how dare you say you feel gross? Like that'll make other people who have dermatillomania think that they're gross. Like, I'm sorry, but when these things happen, I'm not thinking about other people with dermatillomania. I'm not thinking about other people in general. I'm thinking about how I feel, and I feel gross, and I feel embarrassed, and I feel ashamed. There's blood all over my office for no reason. There's no reason for this. Why? I'm not feeling anxious tonight. I'm not feeling sad. I'm not feeling stressed. I didn't even realize I was doing it. And now I have to bandage up my feet. And I know tomorrow my family is going to notice that my feet are bandaged, and they won't say anything, but I will notice them seeing. I will notice them looking at it. They won't say anything, but I'll feel it. I'll know that they notice. It's just, I hate it all. I just don't want it to be a part of my life anymore. It's so frustrating. It sucks. So if you are struggling with a BFRB, or if you think you might be struggling with BFRB, please reach out to your doctor, reach out to a therapist, because it really can help. While I have not seen improvement with the actual act of picking up my skin, I have seen improvement in my mindset, and it's nice to have someone to talk to about it and someone who understands. I just recommend doing a lot of research and finding someone who knows about it, because I had to go through a couple therapists who didn't know much about it because there's not much research, and I finally found someone who knows a lot about it and is great. She recommended this book, which is Overcoming Body Focused Repetitive Behaviors. She said it's really wonderful. So I haven't started reading it yet, but if you guys want to read along with me, we can read it together. Another thing is obviously fidget toys that a lot of people have recommended to me. A lot of people have sent to me. Putty is one of my helpful things. This is like a silly putty type of texture. Rubik's Cubes, a lot of people like. I don't. Fidget spinners. But my favorite fidget toy that has helped me the most are these. I think they're called Specs. Specs are these little magnetic balls. So they're tiny, tiny little magnets. These are my jam. To be honest, fidget toys, I still have not had too much success with because the yearning to just pick at my skin is much stronger than like the idea of me not. So I don't want to like stop picking to pick up magnetic balls. I want to finish doing what I'm doing, which is the picking. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening and for watching. And I'm at the very beginning of this journey of trying to be better. So I hope that I can update you in a year or in a few months or in a couple years or someday saying like, I don't do it anymore. That would be a dream. And then to just be able to continue to normalize and talk about this issue that I've struggled with a lot. And I know a lot of people have struggled with. It has severely affected my mental health and my self-esteem and my overall life. It's something I want to fix and adjust. I know it's possible. I'm very grateful for anyone out there who's shared their stories with me through letters, through comments. It has meant the world to me to know that I'm not alone on those nights where I'm crying in bed feeling like a total freak and feeling like no one else could possibly know what this feels like. To see that there are people out there who do know what it feels like has helped immensely. And so thank you to anyone who's been brave enough and open enough to share their stories with me. It means a lot. And yeah, love you guys so much. And thanks for letting me share. Bye.